Well, it's my privilege now to hand it over to Melanie Bueckert. Melanie is a longtime friend and member of Christian Legal Fellowship, and one of the brightest people that I know. She graduated from Robson Hall as the gold medalist, and is currently employed as legal research counsel for the Manitoba Court of Appeal. Melanie has also been very generous with her time and has invested in bringing leadership to our CLF chapter in Winnipeg and mentoring a number of law students and young lawyers in Winnipeg. And she's also written a series of articles in our Christian Legal Journal on research tips in specific areas of the law. And so a number of those are available on our website as well for free, and want to encourage you to take a look at those articles as well, because they are really rich resources on research tips. Melanie has kindly offered to provide this webinar today on navigating some of the challenges of researching remotely in light of COVID-19, but also to provide a bit of a primer on some general tips and tricks for legal research. So without further ado, it is a real privilege for me to introduce Melanie. Melanie, thank you so much for presenting today, and we're going to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Derek. Yeah, a couple other, let's see, caveats. As many of you probably are dealing with, I am also a part-time grade 4 teacher. My son is at home because school has been canceled. So at any moment, a 9-year-old could run into the room, though I have advised him I am doing this presentation. And you might notice my excellent background. I am indeed presenting to you from my bedroom because it is one of the few areas of the house with a door that closes. So with all that, happy to get going with the presentation. Bear with me as I am still figuring out some of how Zoom's functionality, but we'll jump into the slides now. There we go. And yeah, let's talk about research. So that's me, as you can see. All I wanted to say in terms of other sort of housekeeping notes was that this webcast was a little tricky to prepare because I don't know exactly where my audience is coming from in terms of research skill levels. For many of you, if you do research regularly, you're probably finding that researching remotely isn't that different from what you've been doing in the past. There's a few sort of extra hurdles and hiccups, but mostly you're still able to access everything you've used before. For others, maybe if you are self-isolating or your firm has closed and you don't have access to that librarian or articling student or junior who generally does your research, now you are facing some challenges and this might all be new to you. So we'll try to sort of cover that range of skills, but I am presuming a bit of basic Canadian legal research knowledge. I did want to say, though, I apologize to my colleagues in Quebec. I am not a civil law lawyer, and I won't be spending a lot of time highlighting the resources available in your province, though I do have one slide on what's available through CanLII today. So with all that, let's get started. So I thought I'd start just by saying, you know, for personally, how has this whole situation affected my practice? And honestly, it hasn't been that big of a difficulty for me. I generally do work at the courthouse, and now, as I've said, I'm working from home part-time running a grade 4 class. So that's different, and really this situation has forced the government to provide me with VPN access so I can get my email, my files, and also access our memo database of all the memos that are prepared for the Court of Appeal over the years. So I'm able to reach all of that from my computer here at home. The biggest thing has been that the COVID has shut our library. Normally I access the great library run by the Law Society of Manitoba in the 3rd floor of our courthouse, and it is closed. So I guess I might still be able to access it. I do have a key, but there's no staff on site, and you know, I'm not going down to the courthouse very regularly. So I'm missing access to most of the textbooks that I can use, as well as older print cases that aren't available on other services. But other than that, there's still CanLII, Westlaw, QuickLaw, and all the resources provided to members of the Law Society through the members portal are all available to me. So really not a huge change, but we'll just sort of go ahead here and say, so what, you know, practically, how has this affected things? So when I approach a research problem, this is my standard research plan. Start by checking to make sure nobody has already researched this, look through our memo database. Then I would go to a textbook to try to figure out, generally what is this area of law about, give me the framework. Then maybe look for some articles that are maybe more in-depth or more recent on the specific narrow subject, and then delve into case law. Well, the biggest problem, as I've mentioned, is that textbooks really are off limits to me right now in their paper form up in the reserve room of our great library. So let's talk about some options for where else you might look for secondary source content. Well, we've got ProView. So if that's something that you're unfamiliar with, if you subscribe to any Thomson Reuters Carswell product in a loose leaf format, they also do that electronically through what they call ProView. So you can have the print version or the ProView version or both. And that is obviously something you pay extra for. It's not included in your Westlaw subscription, but many of their titles are available through ProView nowadays. And of course, there are also textbooks available through Westlaw. LexisNexis texts may also be available as an add-on to your subscription. CanLII has a rapidly expanding collection of secondary source materials. Google, in fact, has some material that might be of use. There's something called the Social Science Research Network, SSRN, and of course, lots of lawyers out there are blogging. So let's talk about each of those briefly here. So one thing I'll mention in terms of the subscription services, QuickLaw, Westlaw, Carswell, LexisNexis, if you own the paper copy of a book, you should probably be looking into at this point whether there is some sort of online access to it. I received an email from Thomson Reuters, Carswell, saying, for our print customers, we are offering access to your current holdings via digital and online content provisioning options through ProView or PDF format. And you're to contact your print sales rep or customer service to talk about those options. So certainly if there's a book that you're really missing from your print collection and you'd like to have electronic access, it sounds like Westlaw Carswell might be able to make that happen. So also in terms of Westlaw and QuickLaw, I mentioned, look at what you already are subscribing to. You may well have access to some of the leading textbooks through different aspects of your subscriptions. In Westlaw, those are the source products. So Law Source is your basic Westlaw. And then there's different topical collections like Family Source, Criminal Source, IP Source, Litigator that are out there that will group different resources by topic. Also, for any law students on the call, as you may already have heard, if you have case books that were published by eMend, those are being made available for free to students due to this COVID situation. So the link on this slide will take you to their page that will give you access to those materials. And then, of course, your law society may also provide some resources. So I'm going to see now whether I can get us over into Westlaw to just quickly look at what's available there. So let's see if this works. All right, so hopefully you are all now seeing the Westlaw Next Canada landing page. And things I wanted to highlight here is that if you have any additional subscriptions beyond the Law Source product, you would see that here in the My Subscriptions portion on the right-hand side. And so I have access to Criminal Source, Estates and Trust Source, Family Source, and Litigator. So if you're looking for something sort of specifically about criminal law, you can go there, and they've grouped, many of the relevant statutes. And if you scroll down on the page, there are text and annotations related to this area. So you can get McWilliams, you can have Crankshaw's, sentencing, Iwaschuk is in here. So that would be one area where you can go and see all of their stuff grouped topically. Otherwise, just click on text and annotations from the main landing page, and this will bring up everything. So 365 options. Now, many of them, I'm sure it's the same for you, are out of plan, but you can, if you scroll down on the left, show in plan only, and then you'll get the 67 that I seem to have access to. So here you can see, again, you could limit by subject or what have you, but you can get a sense of what's available there. So back to the main page. Also just thought I'd do a couple shout outs. So we have the Canadian Encyclopedic Digest, the CED, that's available to you. Again, a topical collection that, you know, will give you a really high level overview of various areas of law, often divided between Ontario and West. So you can check those out. There's also the Canadian Abridgment Digests. I thought I'd take a moment to just explain that they obviously, I think people are familiar with the Canadian Abridgment Digest. Whenever you went to law school, it was still kind of the main digest service available for Canadian law. So editors take Canadian cases and then break them up into little digests and sort them by topics. What they're realizing is that, of course, that is very much focused on a litigator's practice. And solicitors generally, if things are going the way you want them to, there is no case law in your area. So they've created this browse legal topics, which is also this orange box over here at the top right, that takes the abridgment classification taxonomy and expands it to also include solicitor topics and other things that don't really have case law attached to them. So definitely check that out if you're looking for maybe more esoteric or newer topical area. They may have something for you. There's also, of course, the words and phrases. There's the Index to Canadian Legal Literature. They've got a defined terms tool that you can use. And I noticed they've popped this down here at the very bottom on the left, COVID-19 legal material. So that stuff is all new. Okay, bear with me as we try to get back to our presentation here. All right. So that's what we were talking about on Westlaw. Now, with respect to people on this call who are Law Society members, I hope you're already aware that your Law Society likely provides you with a lot of resources in terms of research-related content. Now, the trick, of course, when making a presentation like this is, as everybody is grown accustomed to, the situations change on a daily and even hourly basis. So I've tried here to give a snapshot of what's available in the different provinces and territories, but with the caveat that you'll need to double check to see what's going on in your jurisdiction. A great way to do that is to follow the blog of your library of choice. So check that out. Here in Manitoba, we've got access to Hein Online, which it has an excellent law journal database, and it also has an amazing collection of Canadian statutes. Irwin Law, so all those maroon essentials of Canadian law texts are all freely available to us. We also have Eamon's Criminal Law series, which has a whole range of textbooks on a variety of subjects. VLEX, which is the old maritime law book, and a rangefinder criminal sentencing tool. Oh, I'd also mention that I've talked here about the libraries, but your Law Society itself may well, like the Law Society of Manitoba, have its own COVID page. So check both your Law Society and your library sites for information on that. So here, I'm not going to go into great detail. I've got a slide for each province and what you have access to, as well as any COVID-related updates that they've given. So, you know, you get a feeling of the fact that these law societies are providing lots of great resources to their members. Articling students, you'll have to check with your different branches and to see what exactly your status is, whether you can access these things. And law students, I'm not certain. You can, again, contact your law society to find out if you are included in their, the license that they have for these products. So yes, as Sarah already mentioned, the slides will be made available after the presentation, so you can look at whichever your area is, or whichever bars you are a member. But let's see here. Okay, so one thing I noticed when I was going through is that the majority of provinces have access to Hein Online. And maybe that's something you used when you were in law school. Maybe it wasn't, or maybe you just haven't had a chance to take a look at it recently. So I figured we could take a moment to give that a quick look. Oh, hang on, I just did the wrong thing. My apologies. Okay, I need to share my Hein Online screen. Let's see. Okay. All right. So when you log into Hein Online, this is your main landing page. And as I said, the Law Journal Library is, I think, what most people think of when they think of Hein Online. This is an American product, but they do have a variety of journals. Many Canadian journals are there, Manitoba Law Journal, McGill Law Journal, whichever one you're looking for, as well as obviously many American sources. So check that out. But the thing I wanted to draw to your attention was that they've also, I see they've added the US Presidential Impeachment Library, but that's not going to be something I'm going to talk to you about, was the Provincial Statutes of Canada. So something I used to rely on my library for was all the older statutes, things that were hard to access through, or really didn't even exist on Westlaw. And so I just happened to choose Manitoba. So you can see Statutes of Manitoba from 1871 up to 2018 are all available here. So if I click on that link, I will now get access to all these statutes going well back in time. Even if you want to find something from 1880, there it is. You just click on the links as well. We'll just go back here for a second. All the revised statutes. So however that was done in your province or jurisdiction, you can see in Manitoba, there was 1880, 1892, 1903, and going forward. So we have the unusual situation, as you're mostly likely aware, of the reenactment of our statutes bilingually in 1987. So that too is available here. So you can get access to all of those things through Hein. And when I did a quick look across the board, most places seem to have very good historical coverage. Ontario, 1867 to 2017, Alberta, 127 volumes from 1906 to 2018. So definitely take a look. If your Law Society gives you access to Hein, you can access these things as well. So for sure, keep that in mind. One other thing, oh, I did it again. I'm sorry. Is the Irwin Law products. So if we go there, again, if you have access through your Law Society, this would likely be the landing page. It's called De Libris. That is the product that Irwin Law uses to host their collection. So look for that if it's not labeled Irwin Law through your Law Society. It's called De Libris. For us, we have access to their whole Essentials in Canadian Law. So maybe this looks familiar to you. You maybe used those in law school or earlier in your career. I think here, there's 103 different titles. Kent Roach's Criminal Law, the one on Section 7, all kinds of different options here. So these are really phenomenal introductory texts and can really give you a quick summary of the law in various areas. So this is something I can access. You know, you just click on the title you want, assuming that it's going to cooperate for me today. And then it will pull up essentially like a ebook version of the text, and you can read it online. And then it's just like flipping through a book. You can see all the title page information. There's also a linked table of contents, and you can just jump right into whichever area you're interested in. And there's print functionalities. My tip for you on this is that if you don't really want to print a whole schwack of this book, but you want to make it available offline, use your print to PDF function in the printer, and then you can create PDF files of the sections of the textbook that you would like to go back and review. All right, So back to our presentation, which I'm going to do wrong every time, and I apologize. Okay, presentation. Here we go. So, CanLII. Hopefully this is a site that you are all familiar with. I hope you know it and you love it, because we are so fortunate here in Canada to have this. I know it's really not fair to say it's free. We all, if we are members of our law societies, pay a small fee of maybe around $40 every year to support CanLII, but it's definitely the best investment that you're making in your practice. For the purposes of this talk, I just wanted to mention the commentary that is now being made available on CanLII. There's also some new features that have been launched within the last few months that we'll take a quick look at. Lexbox, plug here for some work that I've done with them. The Canadian Legal Research and Writing Guide is something that's available. It was written as a cooperative effort by a number of lawyers and librarians for CanLII. So if you're looking for a basic free legal research guide, check that out. And for sure, follow the CanLII blog to stay up to date on things that are happening there. So let's see if we can go over and actually look at CanLII live. Okay, so hopefully if you are an English speaker, this is what your main CanLII landing page looks like. And the things that I want to draw to your attention were this whole commentary section in the middle of the page where it says books, articles, reports, and more. So if you just want to sort of browse through what's available, or you can do searches of it in this search area at the top. They've got books, and a whole host of journals are now being made available here. I couldn't even do a screenshot because there's so many, from the Alberta Law Review down to the Windsor Yearbook on Access to Justice. Now, not all of them have their very most up-to-date info, like the McGill Law Journal is only to 2018, but it has historical coverage back to 1989. So if you found a reference to an article and you're trying to find a free copy of it, CanLII may well be the place to go. And we'll just head back to the main page. So also thought I'd point out down here on the main CanLII landing page is the link to the CanLII blog, and you can follow that by RSS, or I think by email. If you go into the blog itself, there's a sign up feature. So check that out if you'd like to stay up to date on CanLII. And yeah, just thought I'd show, so we talked about walking through the commentary just by clicking the link. This main search function that you're probably used to using on CanLII can also be used to search commentary. So let's just say I'm being very selfish and want to know all the things that people have said about Bueckert or Bueckert along the way. I just type that into the search box. There's 185 results, 148 of them are cases, but when you come over here, 37 of them fall into the commentary area, and you'll see the Canadian Parliamentary Review, Canadian Law Library Review. So you are getting results from their commentary, books, articles, journals, collections. So that is all integrated into the main CanLII search function. Okay. I also heard that some people have questions about some of the new features that CanLII has recently rolled out. So I thought we could take a quick look at what some of those are. So maybe you've heard the Supreme Court issued this decision called Babalov. It's kind of popular or something, but I thought it might give us a good chance to look at the two biggest changes to CanLII within the last couple of months. First of all, we now have these blue jalapeno peppers. Personally, not a fan of the pepper emoji that they chose, but I'm not in charge. So what this is now showing, before CanLII, CanLII does not employ a lot of human editors, really none. All of the things that they do are done by algorithms and the computer. So they didn't have people doing what you can see in Westlaw. Say if you do a key cite of a case in Westlaw, And you can see a depth of treatment indicator that shows this is a case that really talks about Vavilov a lot, or this is a case that cites it once in a footnote. And they have that depth of treatment. CanLII never had that. They could either tell you, yes, we were able to, by the computer, resolve this citation and link it back, or we can't. Like, that's really how their node up tool functions. Now they've improved it, they've tweaked it, they've added something to their algorithm to say, well, this case talks about this case a lot in the sense of there's numerous citations of it. I don't know all the details, but essentially this new legal Scoville scale, as it were, with the peppers has been introduced to show, so it's a 1 to 5 scale. 5 being like the most in-depth treatment, and then 1 being just like a mention. Or it might not even get a pepper if it's something like a very vague mention. So the only thing I wanted to caution people is, so if you are in Vavilov and at the main, at the front of this document, you see the cited by tab, I've clicked on that. It indicates there's 548 cases that cite Vavilov, and yet on this first page, you just get the top 10 results. That's how they've, like by relevance, that's what they put here. So you need to scroll down as I just did there. Sorry, I should do that again. So you would click on, sorry, bear with me. You've clicked on the cited by link in Vavilov, and then you scroll to the bottom, and there you can say search for all citing documents. So now you can see all 548 cases, and you can decide whether you want to sort it by relevance, which is the default. So the ones with the 4 peppers are coming up most. Yeah, and it's explaining to you by the tooltip there, this decision, it talks about it with a fair bit of intensity. That's what they're calling it. That there's a fairly in-depth discussion of Vavilov within this Quebec Superior Court case, or, this Supreme Court case. But you can do all the things you're used to doing in CanLII, sort it by date, newest, oldest, most cited, whatever you want to do. So that's what the peppers mean. It's a depth of treatment indicator. Now, I did want to go back to Vavilov to show one other thing, and hopefully you've been noticing this yourself as you've come across cases. Now, it's not every case in CanLII that has this, but pretty much every Supreme Court case, you'll be going along past the head note, which for Vavilov is extremely long, past all that header info, and now you're into the case. And you're seeing these funny boxes and lines and things next to each paragraph. So what they've done, and this is unique as far as I'm aware within Canadian legal research, this is what I would call heat mapping. So they've broken the decision down, not only what we just talked about, a noting up function to say, oh, this case talks about this case. They've now done that on a paragraph by paragraph level. So you can see that 13 cases within the CanLII database have cited paragraph 2 of Vavilov. That's what that little box is indicating. You'll also notice that the color of the little sidebar changes. It's a very light gray in a, minimal citation situation, and then it gets darker as you get, say, like 62 cites. This bar is basically black. And then by clicking on the little box, you can see, your options. You can copy the text of that paragraph, or you can see the 62 citing documents for that paragraph 10. And now that's what comes up when you click on that link. So yeah, and it's explaining up here that you've noted up specifically paragraph 10 of Vavilov. So I think it's a really handy tool. I hope it doesn't derail people from actually reading cases themselves and deciding what's important for their purposes, but at a glance, you can read through a lengthy Supreme Court judgment and see, okay, well, at least other people think these are the paragraphs that are most worth talking about. So again, this doesn't show a positive or negative treatment. It might be that everybody strongly disagrees with those paragraphs, but at least you can see that's what's generating the discussion and the link backs, the citations. So 92 on paragraph 23, for instance, out of all 548 cases. So the one thing I wanted to mention, so far as I am aware, the last I spoke with folks over at CanLII, these links, the paragraph level citations, are only to cases. Commentary is not integrated into this function, so you wouldn't be seeing articles that cite that paragraph. at least not at this point. So yeah, just wanted to make that clear. And then one more thing to talk about with CanLII. So when you're back up at the top of a case, maybe you've noticed, and I don't know, perhaps you're already using it, there's this thing called LexBox. And it is also developed by the same people who run CanLII, Lexham, or well, CanLII owns that now, whatever the relationship is. This is a tool that if you're used to having a research trail in Westlaw, LexBox gives you that functionality for CanLII. But not only CanLII, it also integrates with many other sites, like the federal laws websites and other public websites, non-subscription services. So you can save cases to it. You can also set up citation alerts if there's a case or a statute that you're particularly interested in monitoring. CanLII through LexBox will run those searches for you and let you know if somebody cites a particular section or a particular case. And then if you had a LexBox account, you could access all your saved items through this thing. And that's a free service. You just need to sign up for an account. So consider that if you're doing a lot of research in CanLII and would like some sort of a research trail and ability to save cases in folders. LexBox will let you do that. All right, back to the presentation. So we've talked about CanLII. Now, I assume many people are very familiar with using Google for their daily searches, whatever they want to know. But there is a role that Google can play in your legal research as well. Google Scholar is a place where Google aggregates scholarly articles, and it may not all be full text, but it could give you a snippet view or even just a citation where you can get a feeling for whether it might be something worth finding in another source. They do also have some American case law if you are in need of that. So check out Scholar and Google Books. Maybe it's something you've been looking into just for your personal reading while your local public library is closed in these times, and that's a great thing it can be used for. But they have also scanned a number of older texts and things that you might not expect to find there. I've given an example there of a really old book on legal maxims. I've also found a really interesting mix of old English cases. People have scanned in those reporters from back in like the 1800s or even older. So if you have a case name or an old citation, go over to Google Books and give it a try. It's not consistent coverage, it's very hit and miss, but you may be able to find free access to an old case or book using Google Books. Other options, I mentioned SSRN. So you might not think of law as a social science, but it fits somewhat uncomfortably under that heading. They don't have really a specific sort of law area where you can just dial in on that. But if you use, creative search terms or specific legal topics, hopefully you can narrow down what you're looking for. What I found with SSRN is that often, even if a professor or a lawyer has written an article that's going into a subscription journal, they will be permitted to post a preprint of it, a draft, as it were, on SSRN, and sometimes even in full text. So if you've got an article you're looking for and you just can't seem to find it, or you don't have access to it through your subscription services, check SSRN and you may be able to find it there. And profs often post other things that they haven't published elsewhere. Maybe, they don't think it's totally polished, or they just haven't, taken the time to go through a submission process. So you can get some great articles there, many Canadian sources, but also American, and really it's a global network. So you'll find things in there from all over the world. So certainly worth checking. Also thought I'd give a shout out to the Osgood Digital Commons. I'm sure many other law schools are also doing great things online, but Osgood, I think, was one of the first to really mandate that their profs use this functionality. So if anyone from Osgood has published something, they really try to make it possible to also make it available for free in the digital commons. So if you're looking for something that's been published by Osgood, check that out. And if there's whatever law school is in your area, see as well if maybe they have something that might be similar. So take a look for that. Other online commentary options. So maybe, I hope, you've already sort of been following blogs that are of interest to you given your practice area, but this would be a great time to do that if you're not already. If you don't even know where to start, lawblogs.ca organizes all the blogs out there in Canada by topic. So you know what areas you're interested in, head over there and see what's available. They're not vetted in any way. You can tell which ones have won CLAWB awards, which are like the most prestigious law blog award in Canada. So that's one possible criterion for your searching, but take a look. You don't know who out there might already be publishing some things of interest to your practice. As well, in addition to that, there are services like Lexology and Mondac that will send you emails you can select which areas you're interested in, and then they'll send you, you can decide the frequency, these updates. And mostly they are sort of aggregating blog posts from big firms across the country. I think they also have coverage from the United States as well. But as far as I know, both of those services are free. So check it out if you're looking to get more current awareness resources. So blogs, and then wanted also to make sure everyone was aware of Ontario's Access CLE. So if you haven't heard of it before, even if you're not from Ontario, still definitely recommend it to you, because any Law Society of Ontario programs, like continuing professional development programs, they now make available for free through the Access CLE portal. I've given you a link to a blog post that explains how you can access it and easily search it, but they have a lot of historical content as well, both, you know, up to the minute sort of things, most recent presentations. There used to be sort of a hold period where you had to pay for the last 6 months, but as far as I've seen, it seems now that all of it is available for free. So if you're trying to access, you know, a presentation by a lawyer or an academic on a specific area, go over to Access CLE and see what they've got. You can do keyword searches and then just access the materials in PDF format. So take a look at that. And also, not sure if you're aware, I don't know why Osgood is getting so many plugs, and I apologize about that. I'm not trying to show favoritism. I'm a proud Robson Hall grad, but they have done something neat over with they've used the Internet Archive to create their own smaller archive of specific content. So mostly it's Ontario Law Reform Commission reports, but they've also included a number of older Ontario cases. So again, you'd want to head over there and check out the specific coverage details, but particularly if you're trying to track down an old Ontario Law Reform Commission report, that's an excellent resource. It's all full text available and searchable there. Okay, so moving away from commentary, again, I hope that folks are already fairly familiar with these resources in terms of the Federal Justice Laws website, LegisInfo, and your provincial law websites. I have interesting conversations with people from time to time. You know, why would I ever want to use these sites when I can just use CanLII? And I understand where you're coming from, but if you head over to CanLII, you find that the content that they generate is drawn from these websites, the federal laws website and each province's website. So personally, I'd prefer to go to the source, and they do provide some additional features depending on the jurisdiction. So in case you didn't know, this is the site that you visit for all of our federal laws. And you can get the Constitution here, including the Charter, consolidated acts and regulations, and then annual statutes going back until 2001. So if you need any of that type of material, check it out. And I also thought I'd mention, under related resources, you can access the Canada Gazette here by a quick link. So check that out. And I was going to talk briefly as well about the LegisInfo site. So maybe this one isn't quite as well known as the laws site. LegisInfo is put together by the Library of Parliament. This would be a place if you are doing statutory research and you either need a copy of a pending bill or you want to investigate the legislative history of an existing piece of legislation, federal legislation, this is the site you need to know about. So you can access parliamentary sessions from right now. The default is to take you into the current session, but even going back as far as 1994. So I thought we could just quickly look at one example here. So I think it was Bill C4. I was gonna pull up. So there's been some negotiations around a free trade agreement, as you might have heard or vaguely remember before all this other news we've been receiving. This is that bill. So C4 is the act to implement the agreement between Canada, the United States of America, and United Mexican States. And I just chose it as an example because, as you can tell from this pretty little bar, it has progressed through all the stages of the legislative process. So if that's the kind of information you're looking for on a bill, this is a fabulous sort of one-stop shop, all freely available to find out what is the status of the bill, what stage is it at. You can find all the published versions of the text, and it takes you right into, you know, direct links of the Hansard readings at second reading, all the committee debates, and, you know, in this case, there happen to be other Senate reports and things. So yeah, at a glance, gives you the progress. The other thing I really wanted to make sure people were aware about is that there's always this section about this bill, kind of in the bottom right. And this is a place where, again, it kind of puts all into one spot, departmental information. I won't say propaganda, but things that the department has put together, but also a legislative summary. And this can be very helpful if the Library of Parliament does an in-depth backgrounder. That would be linked here. And they often, you know, in a more complex or maybe controversial bill, they'll go through like clause by clause and give you know, a background of what was the government thinking, what was the impetus for this, what are some of the concerns, and really all in one place gives you a feel for what was going on with a piece of legislation, as well as links to any further readings like press releases and whatnot. So check that out if you're digging into a statute, whether it's a pending bill or one from a previous year. Everything up till 1994, for the most part, is available here. And I should add that, you know, don't despair if you're looking for something older than 1994. You'll find that there's something through the Library of Parliament called the Canadian Research Knowledge Network, that they've created a Canadian Parliamentary Historical Resource site. So anything that is not covered through LegisInfo, so sorry, back to our main LegisInfo page here, anything prior to the 35th session is available there. So yeah, back to 1867 for the House of Commons and the Senate, and a variety of other journals and debates and things. So it is out there, but understand that some of it's not as user-friendly as this, so hopefully you find what you need in Legisinfo, but you can also access that other information through the Library of Parliament. Okay, back to the presentation. Go. So we've already kind of stepped through. I wasn't going to promote any particular provincial laws website. I use obviously the Manitoba one most frequently. I know, you know, Ontario has e-laws and there's a whole variety of others out there. The main thing you want to consider in terms of which one do you prefer to use is, you know, just to look at their functionality. Which one has the oldest set of annual statutes? What do they have in terms of versioning tools? So looking at what did this piece of legislation look like at a given time. CanLII offers that, where some jurisdictions may not have as robust coverage. And you can compare versions within CanLII, which may not be a tool available other places. Also, depending on your jurisdiction, like if your jurisdiction publishes statutes in PDFs that aren't super great for navigating or printing, CanLII might be better, or vice versa. I'm not sure I always love CanLII's new PDF format. I find that the searching is off sometimes. I'd go straight into the download the PDF from CanLII or use your jurisdictions, whatever they provide, if it's HTML or something else, just to be sure that the search functionality is working properly. Oh, and here we've already covered this. And lastly, I thought I would include some COVID-19 resources. So maybe you're sick of hearing about it already, but in case you do have any issues or questions relating to how COVID is impacting your practice, Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis both have free resource packages available. I've given the links there, as well as the Christian Legal Fellowship, as Derek already mentioned, had done a webcast and is continuing a series of webcasts that might be of relevance. So I've given you that link, and I believe that brings us to the end of what I had hoped to talk about.